Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel's new generation of interviews. Tom O'Connor here, of course, from New Orleans, and as always with Rachi Messing of Alterny. And we are very happy to have with us today Fred Lozada, who is a litigation support project analyst at Alston Bird in the LA office. Fred, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Rocky's got a series of questions, and he's going to pose for you and pose to you, and we'll take it from there. So, Rocky, take it away.
Yeah. So, Fred, thanks for joining us. Let's start with the nice and easy one. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a project analyst for Alston Discovery at Alston and Bird. I've been there for a little over a year, maybe about a year and a half now. I'm in the e-discovery industry for I want to say about 5 years now. Uh, so a little bit of background on me. I come from a vendor background. I worked for an attorney service for quite a while. Um, a little bit, north of 20 years.
Oh,
Just started as a regular courier, delivering documents to the court, just kind of reading through the documents, getting familiar. I ended up being placed on site at one of our clients to manage all of their workload from their site. So I'm an on-site vendor, sort of a third party.
Mhm.
Um, so I did that for quite a while. And as I was going, I, just kind of picked up a little bit as far as, learning the documents and just reading, basically just reading what I was filing with the court and the research that I was doing. And so I did that for so long that at some point, becoming a paralegal piqued my interest. So I went through what I call hoops of fire to get into UCLA's paralegal program.
wow.
It's a very prestigious program, and so being that I didn't have a bachelor's degree, it's that there's that's sort of a requirement or a prerequisite to get into the program. But what they had was what they call a professional waiver, and so they sort of give you a shot based on your work experience and your background and how long you've been in the industry. And so I had to write 6 page statement of intent, and I had to get letters from some of the professionals that I worked for. They want references, and they say, we don't want your uncle and your sister and your best friend. We need professionals that you actually worked with. We need some attorneys, some paralegals that you actually did some work with. And so it
Great.
literally took me about a year to get into the program.
Wow.
Um, but I got in, and I had the privilege of meeting Miss Joy Murao there in the program. She was my legal tech instructor.
Oh,
And so halfway through the program, talking to Joy, and she knew about my vendor background. And halfway through the program, my interest started shifting a little bit. Now I started to shift from wanting to be this, traditional paralegal to now wanting to do e-discovery, which was where the industry had already sort of shifted. And so,
Mhm.
in the e-discovery, we had an e-discovery paralegal at the firm that I was at, Tammy Loveland. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tamara Loveland. She works for the DOJ here in LA, but she was
yeah.
at the firm that I was at. And so she knew my experience and everything. She said, "Hey, you should really try this." And so that's how I got into the program. And then Joy, took it from there. She, kind of just started putting e-discovery into my head. And so when I was done with the program, Joy made me a promise, I'm gonna come and get you. Just give me a year or so. She was starting her own business. And so
Right.
right. And so I went back to my, attorney service, and I said, "Hey, I have these credentials now. I'm a credentialed paralegal." And so, the money wasn't there. They wouldn't, sort of pay me for what I'm now credentialed to do. So I said, okay. So I took off and I went to go do family law for 3 years. Um, so while I was doing this, in the third year, I get an email from Joy. She's like, "Hey, I'm ready. Like, let's talk." And so I called her up and we talked about it. The timing was kind of perfect. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the West Side over here in LA, and
Oh, yeah.
it commute sucks. And so I'm living in the
Oh,
southeast area of Los Angeles County, almost in Orange County. And so this paralegal job that I had was all the way in Beverly Hills.
oh, God.
So the commute was
Yeah.
just a nightmare.
Yeah.
So,
That's
you
like
know,
a
Joy,
5 hour commute. Like,
Yeah.
it's yeah, both ways, I guess you could put it that
yeah.
way, right? Because
Yeah.
so Joy
Oh
was
God.
just it was just perfect timing. And so I left the paralegal. I mean, you know, that my paralegal
Sure.
post as a
Yeah.
family law paralegal, and I went to go work for Joy. And I think I worked for Joy for a little over a year. And then the firm that I was on site at for the attorney service then calls me back and says, "Hey, you know, it's been a few years. We know you've got this experience now. We'd like to offer you a job." And
Oh,
so
great. Great.
it was kind of full circle because I loved working there. I worked there for 8 years as a vendor. You know, I was familiar with all the secretaries and the paralegals, and everyone knew me. And so it was sort of full circle. Joy wasn't too happy about it, but you know, she
She'll get
understood.
over it. Well,
No, she understood. She was very happy
and
for me at
she,
the end.
yes, she's got that big smile of hers, so
Oh yeah.
she'll
Yes.
be
Yeah.
And
fine.
so and you know, I always say I owe this to her. She's the one that sort of steered me in this direction. And now I'm in a position that I'm in because of her. And so, you know, it's funny because when I got this job at Alston and Bird, I turned them down initially. You know, I mean, it's a Fortune 100. I mean, the AmLaw 100 firm. It's a huge
Yeah.
firm. They've got their own on-site. You know, they're like a vendor within the firm. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I sort of didn't really grasp that. That didn't really, you know, set in right away. You know, it was more of, you know, trying to take care of my family. And so the firm that I was at, you know, we went back and forth as far as you know, how much salary, and it was the timing, all of it was perfect because it was, you know, review time at the old firm, you know, where I was at. And so they gave me a review and I wasn't happy with it because they initially hired me to be this, you know, hybrid paralegal where I can do some traditional paralegal work and maybe help out in the ESI department and, you know, helping with relativity because I had some relativity experience. And so, but when I went to work there 3 months into the position, the guy that I was working with, my coworker, just quit.
Hmm.
He says, "Okay, you got this, I'm out." And so he left. And so it just left me by myself. You
Doing
know,
everything.
I was the firm's ESI guy. I was the litigation support
Yeah.
eDiscovery person for about 6 months by myself.
Oh.
Wow.
And I mean, I
Like
managed
trial
it
by fire, right?
trial, but I was, you know, my current boss, Manette Smith, I'm not sure if you guys know who she is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um, she likes to say I was drinking from a fire hose, you know, and so
Exactly.
and
Sounds
so
like
I was, but because of the experience that I gained from Joy, I was able to handle it, you know,
it. Mhm.
seamlessly, and I took care of it, and there were no issues or anything until they were able to hire someone, and then so now I'm like, I'm at a project manager position, I think, you know, at this firm, right?
Right.
And so they threw some money at me I wasn't happy with. You know, I did my research. I'm like, you guys are lowballing. You know, you're giving me this money, but this is not what you're paying me to do. I'm in a
Right.
whole different role here, and if you do the research, you're not paying me what
It's
this role pays. You know, and so we went back and forth, and then so again, timing is everything. You know, I'm getting recruited now by Alston and Bird through LinkedIn, and so I went through the interview process. You know, it piqued my interest. I went through the interview process and everything. And so I kid you not, the interview process for this place took me about 2 months. I interviewed with about 17 different people.
wow.
Maybe they vet
Right?
their people very carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you meet with everyone on the team. I want to say we have four legal tech teams, you know, with the project manager paired with a project analyst. And so we have four teams. You have to meet with all four
All of
teams,
them. Wow.
all of them. We have a group of review attorneys, of staff attorneys, and then
Mhm.
consulting attorneys. You have to interview with all of them. You have to interview with the
Right.
directors, you know,
Make sure that the culture fits, make sure that the
yes,
facility fits, and
yes,
that you've got the actual,
right.
knowledge to be able to
The
do it.
knowledge, right.
Yeah.
And they had a hard time finding someone. I can tell you that much. And
Uh-huh.
so they made me an offer. I said, okay, you know, thank you. And so I went back to my firm and says, you know, this is what's happening, you know, and so they threw some more money at me and like, oh,
Okay.
but at this point I'm thinking, okay, why didn't you give me this initially when it was
Right.
review time, right? You knew you know, you already know what I bring to the table. You know, why'd you have to wait till somebody's trying to steal me for you to, you know, so, you know,
Yeah.
it was a long thought process, you know, and this is during Ralph Fest a couple years ago. And
Okay.
so I'm now, you know, I've now taken this offer from my current firm and turned down the offer from
Pivoted.
Alston and Bird, right? And says, I'm sorry, they just offered me this much money and I just couldn't turn it down, I couldn't refuse, right? So the Alston team is in Ralph at Ralph Fest, and so is Joy. So Joy walks by their table. They're like, "Hey, Joy." They start talking, and they're like, "Oh, you got one of my guys. You're getting one of my guys. It's great." And they're like, "Wait, wait, let's not pop any champagne bottles yet because he
Right.
turned us
It's not
down.
happening
He
yet.
turned us down, right?" And so I get a call at 10:30 at night on a Friday from Ralph Fest from Joy. She may or may not have been drinking a little bit, but she's basically telling me, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "You can't," she's basically telling me the importance of this
Right.
position,
How, this is an opportunity.
yeah,
So
this is an
yeah.
opportunity. It's a career thing. It has nothing to do with, whatever money they're giving you, you can make that up in a year or two,
Yep.
you don't. And so I said, "Joy, it's, 10:30 at night. Let's talk about this in the morning." And so we did. We had a long, very heartfelt conversation in the morning. And she just put things into perspective. I can take the money now, but I'm probably going to sit there for years at that
Right.
same rate.
And
And this particular
that's a growth
firm,
opportunity.
yeah,
Yep.
this particular firm had sort of a revolving door at that position where, the administrator sort of wanted to have control over it, but she had no clue about eDiscovery and relativity or anything like that. And so it made it to where that person sitting, including the person behind me or before me, was not comfortable with their position. And so I wasn't comfortable with it. I knew that you're going to offer me this money. You don't want to give me the title, but you want to give me the money. I get it. And so that just means that now you're going to do whatever you want with me. And that's not okay. I need the title. I need, this is what I do. I need my job description. It's not just,
Right.
give me the money and then we're going to do what we want with you. And so, I had that long conversation with Joy. She sort of put those things into perspective for me. And then I said, okay, well, I
Yep.
went back. And Alston and Bird knew what they were doing because when I turned them down, they said, "Well, okay, you're not thinking straight. We're going to give you a couple days."
Right.
And they did.
No,
They were
no
going to give
final
you,
decision here.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So we're going to give you a couple days. You go ahead and talk to Joy. You talk to, let us know what happens, and and then come
Good.
back to us. And then so
Good. And it always it's great when you've got a mentor like that who you can really rely on and we'll talk, it not necessarily the tell you what to do, but to help you figure out what is the right.
yes,
So
yes.
let me ask you this. When you're not at work, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
My family is my hobby. That's pretty much it. I don't really do much just outside of, with my family. I mean, I can tell my son, I have an 11-year-old. I have three adult children. So all
Okay.
made me a grandfather already. So I have eight grandchildren.
Wow.
Congrats. Nice.
And then I have an 11-year-old son. So that guy keeps me busy. He plays Pop Warner football. I coach, and so that's sort
Oh,
of what, during the off season we're kind of just hanging out, doing random things here and there.
good.
But from I would say from June to December, it's all about Pop Warner football.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me ask this. Within your role, um, first of all, what is the firm adopting AI? Is it impacting
Yes.
you on a daily basis? Like, how do you see AI impacting in general?
Well, it's coming on, like it's a topic of conversation at every sort of legal event that happens. And not that I haven't been, but
You
our
hear it,
bosses, the directors, right, we have a joint call every Tuesday and Wednesday. The joint call on Tuesday is with the discovery team, with the techs and the analytics department. And then the one on Wednesday is a joint call that brings in all of the staff attorneys and the review attorneys. And so we have this big call. And so they fill us in all of the stuff that's happening at these events. And so it seems like AI seems to be the topic of conversation everywhere. We are now using Air for review uh, with relativity. I haven't the RPM has been the one that's sort of been, handling the review queues and making it happen. I'm kind of just like a fly on the wall right now, learning as much as I can. And then now we're also rolling out Air for Priv. That's going to be rolling out for us pretty soon. And so from what I understand, Alston and Bird seems to be on the cutting edge all of the AI technology that's coming out right now. We seem to be a little bit more ahead of the curve from a lot of the other firms.
Do
So
you
that's
use it
beneficial
in
to
any
me.
way outside of review and in relativity? Do you find that you're using AI on a regular basis to help you in your job?
Um, I suppose within the relativity instance, it's using AI daily.
Hmm.
And so, but as far as specifically using it for something, I have not yet had to
Okay.
use it. Again, the PM takes on those tasks, and so, and he's my PM, Jason Trofe. I don't know if any of you have ever met Jason, but he is a relativity master. And I think we have five relativity masters at Alston and Bird, and
Well,
so
Yep.
I happen to be fortunate enough to be teamed up with Jason, and so again, whenever that guy's working, I'm like a fly on the wall. I'm trying to
And
do
just absorb. That's awesome. Yeah.
I hated, and hate is a strong word, but I hate Excel. I really dislike
Okay.
Excel. But he introduced me to Power Query, and so I'm not sure if you had the privilege of using Power Query, but it's made my life with Excel so much easier. And so,
Yeah.
and that's all thanks to Jason, and those are things that I benefit from, being here at Austin and Bird, is learning from these great
right.
minds. We have a lot of very intelligent people here.
Cool. Um, if you could live anywhere in the world for a year with your family, bring everyone along, where would it be? In the US,
Anywhere
outside the US, doesn't matter. Where would you go?
for a year. I haven't been much outside of the country. I hear Costa Rica is really nice. I had a friend who, wouldn't stop talking about Costa Rica when he was up there. And so, and within the US, my wife and I had the privilege of going to Hawaii a couple of years ago, and we just loved it. And we were
Hmm.
talking about, like, we could live here. We can definitely live here. So yeah, I would think it'd be between, somewhere tropical like that, right?
Yep.
Where
So you're a
it's
beach guy,
yeah,
is what
well,
you're
I'm
saying.
Puerto Rican, so naturally we're from the Caribbean, so
Right.
it is what it is. But yeah, so we are definitely beach people. I mean, we live in the mountains too, if you let us, or on a ranch. But if you gave us a choice, I think
Definitely by the water.
yes,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, last question from me, and then see if Tom has anything else to add. But looking out, so now you're a couple years into an e-discovery role. You've got some experience, and obviously you're seeing how things are shifting with AI and everything else as the firm is using it more. Um, what excites you when you look out like 10 years in the future? What excites you within the industry? Like what do you look at and say, this is where I've established myself, this is where I want to be, and this is what's really got me going.
Well, it's just the ceiling that I have at Alston and Birch. There's so much that I can do right now, starting at a project analyst position, working into project manager, maybe some consulting somewhere down the line. It's just there's so much that I can do at this firm that there's just the sky's the limit. I mean,
Mhm.
who knows where I'm going to end up, 10 years from now, if I'm still going to be here, or I could be in a director role somewhere at another smaller firm, maybe, just maybe less work, but at a higher role, more, a sort of more intellectual capacity where I'm sort
Mhm.
of, using what I've learned here at Austin and Bird to make, someone else's, e-discovery experience a little bit better. Again, I don't see myself going anywhere, leaving Austin and Bird, just because it's one of the top, I think it was the top 25 places to work in the US or in the world. I don't know. They've gotten so many.
Yeah, I
We
know it's a
we
great place to be.
Yeah,
So
we've received so many
yeah,
surveys about, top places to work, and it's been, 30, I don't know, 20 some 30 years running where they've been in the top, top 50, top 25. So,
right.
it's a great place to work. So as far as leaving here, I don't see that in the future, but I know the ceiling's high. So
Yeah, no, it's a great place to be. So
Right.
Tom,
Yeah, and I don't know if this applies to you or not, Fred. In your work, do you get to interface with or people and or data from clients or co-counsel or opposing counsel? And I'm wondering what the level of their technical
mm,
capacity is, AI.
that's a great question. Well, it's funny because we have a big construction case that's going on right now. And so the client has been in the office a couple of times. You know, we've been on calls with them, and so we've got to meet them personally. And we sat with them, and we, tried to help him, sort of go. He's asked for access to relativity,
Uh-huh.
but he has no clue what he's doing. So we gave him access to just to produce documents, only things that have been produced, so he can look at the productions and go through them and do whatever. But he's got constant questions about just things that you cannot do in relativity. But he wants to say, hey, can you do this? Can we take this document and put, it's like we can't do that, but here's what we can do for you. So it's a challenge. We do have some clients, and again, I handle data every day. I'm the person who processes the data. I run the production. I change the coding layouts. I add fields. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of that stuff. So we do deal with clients who want special coding layouts, or I need to be able to do the PDF or mass PDF, or how can I code this? So permissions are always tricky, trying to figure out who gets basic permissions, who gets advanced permissions. And so it all depends on the client and on the case team. If they decide this client's advanced, he knows what he's doing, he knows how to code, he knows how to review things. So just give him access, give him, our type of access, not ours, me per se. I'm an
Yeah.
admin, so you can't have
Yeah.
my access. But you can have case teams access, or maybe even a power user access. But again, it all depends on the client, the amount of data, and what they're allowed to actually see from our instances.
Great. Great. Yeah,
Cool.
that's always interesting to me, that interplay with your level of expertise and how much the client leans on you. That's great to hear.
Right.
Well, Fred, I want to thank you for your time. Some great insights there. I'd be remiss. You mentioned Joy Murao, of course, old friend of both of ours, but I'd be remiss if I didn't pass on a hi from my son Seamus, who was working with Joy. You guys
Yeah.
overlapped at some point.
No, we worked together for about a year. I think
There you go.
Seamus was there almost the whole time that I was there. I
Yeah,
think Seamus came on a little bit after I did, and
yeah.
so he and I were probably the elder statesmen with
Uh-oh.
Joy when we were working. Aside from Chad. I don't know if you know who Plinio is. Plinio is on the East Coast. He
Sure.
worked for Joy for, I don't know if he's still working for her, but
Right. So,
there's also Jonathan Prather. I don't know if you know who Jonathan
yeah,
Prather is.
yeah.
He's at Paul Hastings now. He's my buddy. We're big football fans, so we're always going back and forth. But
She's got quite the roster of alumni
Yeah.
she
who've gone through.
does.
She's a great woman and a great
She
resource
does.
for our
Yes,
profession.
I love Joyce. She is
Yeah,
definitely an important person in my life,
yeah.
for sure. She's
Well,
she's part of the reason why I'm here.
there you go. Well, thanks again, Fred. I really enjoyed hearing your speaking, and we'll uh, we'll hope to see all the rest of you folks again sometime on the eDiscovery channel, New Generation.
Absolutely. Thank you both, gentlemen. Appreciate you.
Bye bye.